Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel is preparing to visit regions of Germany affected by severe flooding that has killed at least 156 people.
South Africa is facing its worst unrest in recent years. What originally started as protests over arrests and jailing of former President Jacob Zuma shifted to violence and anger over the country's dire social and economic issues. Now a cleanup operation is underway after days of looting of shopping centres and businesses that disrupted supply chains and transport links.
An extreme heat wave is sweeping across Western Canada, claiming dozens of lives as people struggle to keep cool. The unprecedented heat smashed Canada's temperature record when the mercury hit 49 degrees Celsius. Cooling centres have been set up to give residents some respite from the sweltering heat, which is expected to last for several days yet.
Myanmar's military regime is estimated to have killed nearly 900 people and detained thousands of others since seizing power in February. Now it seems it's intentionally targeting doctors and nurses. At least 12 have been reportedly killed in the last 5 months alone. The WHO says Myanmar is currently the most dangerous place to be a medical worker, and a warning to viewers may find some parts of this following report distressing.
Health workers protesting against the new regime. That's when the junta decided they were a threat. Since the coup, medics have faced attacks like this by the military, says one fugitive doctor.
ห่วงครับผมเข้าใจว่าสถานการณ์ช่วงนี้มันไม่ดีขึ้นแต่ว่าเราต้องออกมาแสดงว่าเรารู้สึกไม่พอใจกับมาตรการที่รัฐเอาออกมาเหมือนเขาแค่ทำเหมือนแค่อยากให้หยุดทุกอย่างหยุดแต่เขาไม่หาเหตุผลที่จะแก้ในต้นเหตุให้ได้ครับผมเข้าใจว่าตอนนี้มันเสี่ยงเพราะโรคมันระบาดเยอะเราพยายามป้องกันตัวทุกอย่างถุงมือหน้ากากแก๊สทุกอย่างครับผมกันทุกอย่างเพื่อให้มันเกิดผลกระทบต่อเราน้อยที่สุดครับ
The challenges they face couldn't be more daunting. Economic collapse, political stalemate, social unrest, and the devastation caused by the August 2020 explosion here in Beirut.
Is China threatening Japan with nuclear war? A prominent online Chinese military channel is proposing a nuclear attack on Japan. That's after Japan said that it may defend Taiwan if the Chinese regime invades the island.
The Kremlin reportedly plans to deploy T-72B3 battle tanks to the Kuril Islands, where they can be used to destroy enemy assault forces and small enemy ships. In October 2020, Russia deployed S-300V4 air defense missile systems to the territory for the first time to conduct military exercises. Japan is strongly rejecting all actions of Russia in the region.
Indonesia has become the new virus epicenter, bringing the country's health system to its knees.
It's the grim task taken on by locals in this neighbourhood of West Java, a rush to dig fresh graves as the COVID casualty count rises. This man says the diggers are too tired, so residents have decided to help out.
There may come a time when you or your family need to move unnoticed through a crowd, potentially during a time of civil unrest, in order to get to a bug-out location or get home. Would you know how to blend in so as not to draw attention to yourself? Could you be invisible? Could you be the gray man? What is a gray man? The concept of the gray man can be boiled down to this: being able to blend in and not standing out. It's a way to fade into the background of whatever environment you're in, such that you do not elicit a response from those around you. It's being so bland that no one even remembers having seen you. In the context of prepping, the gray man concept is very useful in situations where you have to be mobile while staying undetected. By doing so, you become less of a target for those looking to take advantage of someone. So to begin with, why is being a gray man important? After a major catastrophic event, if there's a prolonged grid-down scenario in your area, eventually people will become desperate. If you stand out as someone that has something of value, you will become a target. In this video, we'll discuss the wider applications in the context of a post-SHTF scenario, and we'll discuss the 3 rules to become a gray man. So let's jump in. Rule number 1, determine your baseline. So what is a baseline? In the context of this conversation, a baseline is determining what is normal for behavior and appearance for a given environment. For example, if I were at the beach, I'd expect people to be wearing swim trunks, t-shirts, bathing suits, and would expect someone to be relaxing. Whereas if I were in a boardroom meeting with C-level executives, I would expect formal dress attire like suits, and I would expect people to be acting in a professional, business-like manner. Not only is clothing part of the baseline, but how people are acting, moving, and behaving is important as well. So a baseline is a combination of many things that revolve around one single concept. What is normal for the given environment in regards to how people appear, move, talk, and act? So how do you determine the baseline in a new environment? Simple. Watch and observe. Before you head into a new environment, take a moment to look around to find out how people are dressing, acting, and behaving, and find a way to do the same. Your goal is to avoid acting or looking out of the norm. When it comes to the concept of the gray man, the goal is to avoid drawing attention to yourself, which leads us to the next point. Rule number 2, avoid creating stimulus. A stimulus is anything that triggers a response when someone sees you that may form an impression with them. What do I mean? If you're in a crowd and you have something on your person or act in a way that causes someone to take notice, you've just created a stimulus. You have stimulated that person's mind to take note of something about you that was out of the ordinary. On a biological level, how does this happen? Without going into a deep discussion, I'll briefly run through how your brain processes and filters information. Let me introduce you to a part of your brain called the RAS, or Reticular Activating System. The RAS is the portal through which nearly all information enters the brain. It is a brain system that filters out extraneous information. You are bombarded on a daily basis by a lot of stimuli, and if your brain didn't filter out things that it deemed as unimportant, you'd suffer from sensory overload. Let me give you an example that you've probably experienced. Ever been at a party or social event, engaged in a conversation with someone, surrounded by a lot of people or other people that are talking, and someone across the room mentions your name? That triggers a response in your brain. The RAS decided to not ignore this information and instead alerted you. The person didn't even have to yell your name, but nonetheless, your brain immediately takes note of this. Your brain this whole time has been filtering out the noise in the room, but prompted you to something that is important. In the context of this discussion regarding prepping, think about what you're wearing or doing that could be perceived as out of the norm that could trigger someone's attention. Going back to our discussion regarding the baseline, we don't want anything about our appearance such that someone looking at a crowd would notice something that stands out on our person. The moment we have created a stimuli in someone's mind, their attention is now on us. During a time of civil unrest, you don't want to draw attention to yourself. If you're trying to move through a crowd or in a neighborhood, you need to look normal, like you belong there. So how do we avoid creating stimulus? How do we match the baseline? Rule number 3. Blend in. Now that we have established a foundation regarding a baseline and how stimulus is created, let's chat about 4 things you have control over to help you blend in and become a gray man. Number 1, how you dress. To begin with, you want to wear clothing that is normal for your baseline. What are the people around you wearing? What is normal? In some parts of the country, wearing camouflage in public would be considered normal, whereas in other parts of the country, you're going to stick out like a turd in a punch bowl. Consider logos on your clothing. Wearing a shirt with a logo will probably trigger stimulus in someone's mind, whereas wearing a simple t-shirt with a muted color and no logos or markings probably wouldn't trigger anyone's attention. Again, remember from our previous discussion regarding the RAS, bland white noise is just filtered out of the mind, whereas markings or identifiers on your person will grab people's attention that could cause them to take note of you because they immediately identify something about you. I'll give you an example. I have a hat that I used to wear with an American flag morale patch. I was at a friend's party and a guy walked up and immediately struck up a conversation, and we were discussing firearms and local ranges we like to visit within a couple of minutes. I don't encounter a lot of these type of conversations here in Southern California, and in the course of the conversation he pointed out that the hat was a dead giveaway. When wearing it, I often get asked if I'm in the military. The hat, which I like a lot, is probably best to be worn when I go to the range and I don't wear it anymore in public. Why? The hat causes an immediate stimulus with people and I've made an impression in their mind. In a hostile situation, someone may perceive me as a threat and target me first. The issue about becoming a gray man really isn't about wearing tactical looking clothing, but rather blending in with what other people are wearing around you. If you're not wanting to draw attention to yourself, avoid clothing that is not the baseline that could cause a stimulus in someone's mind. Number 2, eye contact. Avoid this if at all possible. Once you make eye contact with someone, you will instantly trigger a stimulus in that person's mind. You ever been to the mall and walked by a kiosk where someone is trying to sell something? What are they trying to do? They're trying to get get your attention to come buy their product. The moment you make eye contact, they will try to draw you in. When walking by, I tend to keep my eyes focused forward so that this connection is not made. In a grid-down scenario, having eye contact gives someone a reason to engage with you. In addition to eye contact, avoid getting into conversations when possible. This is a worst case, as a conversation will form a lot of impressions in someone's mind about you. Number 3, demeanor. Do not appear threatening. Even though you may be carrying a concealed weapon, the last thing you would want is to draw someone into an engagement, and by having a casual, calm look, you lessen your chance that someone may notice you. When observing your surroundings, be casual about it. Instead of making it obvious by moving your head and eyes while scanning the room, instead use a prop like reading a newspaper or looking at your phone so that you can use your peripheral vision. Number 4, smell. For those that enjoy hunting, you know this principle all too well. If you're upwind and have a strong smell, the animals will pick up on this and leave. You've created a stimulus that triggers that animal that there's a threat. Something isn't quite right. In the context of our conversation, a smell can make an impression that someone will take note of you. So, what are the applications of the gray man in a pre-SHTF scenario? As I've pointed out in many of my videos, the less information you give your neighbors in regards to your preps, the better. Whether you're dressed with clothing that screams tactical or you share your political views with neighbors, they begin to obviously gather information about what you share, and you are making an impression. Being a gray man with your neighbors doesn't necessarily mean they never notice you, but rather don't provide stimulus that tips them off that you are probably someone with preps. If things go sideways or there's catastrophe in your area, they'll remember you're the guy with the tactical looking clothing, loads guns into his car to go to the range, and has the NRA sticker on his cars. You're the guy that might have the gear and supplies they need for survival. I purposefully don't have any stickers on my cars for this very reason. I don't want to trigger a stimulus in someone's mind. I just want to be another neighbor. Remember what they say about first impressions? People will always remember that first impression. In our case, we don't want to make any impressions, we just want to blend into the white noise in the background. Just because you're trying to blend in and look like you're not a threat, this doesn't mean that you do not have the tools and skills necessary to defend yourself or your family if it comes down to it. You just look like it. Keep sharp. While you may look like you're lost in your thoughts, internally, you are analyzing what is going on around you, and you're on point in your mind. While you may be forgettable, you are not to be trifled with. You are the gray man. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, be safe out there. Several years ago, I made a video on becoming the gray man, how to blend in and go unnoticed in public. Since then, I have talked to more experts in undercover, observational, and investigative work and learned even more about how people are discovered when trying to go unnoticed. So I thought this would be an excellent time to expand upon the first video and discuss 4 new key areas to becoming a gray man. There may come a time when you or your family need to move unnoticed through a crowd, potentially during a time of civil unrest, to get to a bug-out location or get home. Would you know how to blend in or not draw attention to yourself? Could you become invisible? Could you become the gray man? In the first video, I discussed baseline in the context of what is typical for a given environment. I recommended observing the environment and choosing clothes and actions that fit into that environment. Imagine the baseline as the smooth surface of a lake. What's below is hidden. What is above is ordinary. If there is a disruption in the water, our attention is drawn toward the interruption. Our minds automatically begin to question the origin and intent of the disruption. Was it a bird? Was it a fish? A rock falling? Or a person? Genuinely knowing the baseline comes down to answering a few questions for yourself about whatever environment you're passing through before you find yourself there or while you're in it. First, what are the everyday activities of the location and the time of the day's activities? Are you passing through a business district? Do you look like everyone else, coming from or going to work, or out on the lunch break? Every area has a regularly scheduled pattern. Resident areas have people walking in the early mornings and early evenings, but not usually during midday. Cities have a flurry of activity before and after work and during lunch hours. Regarding clothing, if you're in a military-style jacket because that's part of your bug-out gear, you'll look very out of place. Consider what people carry their items in when they move through the area. Placing the military-style jacket and other items in a large retail store shopping bag, for instance, would make you look just like every other shopper in the area. Second, what is the economic and ethnic background of the region you're passing through at the moment? The more prosperous or the more impoverished the neighborhood, the more likely you are to stand out. You'll always want to choose the blandest and average clothing. Hiking boots in a business district will stand out. Move quickly and purposefully through any environment when you're dressed far from the baseline. Lingering in these environments begs people to question what you're doing. Walk at a determined pace, but not too fast. Recognize a baseline of behavior for the area. Do you remember that person you saw that one time singing or shouting in the grocery store? Do you remember that beggar you saw that made you feel uncomfortable? Chances are you do many months later. We have a natural desire to avoid people whose behavior we believe to be less insane or dangerous. At the same time, those people stand out to us because our brain puts us on alert to behavior outside of the baseline. If we were in the peaceful wilderness and suddenly hear branches breaking, it's the same thing. However, in the cityscape, there is usually a cacophony that our minds interpret as a single drone. There's a kaleidoscope of imagery and color that our mind blends together to allow us to focus on precise details. So, we take in the sounds and imagery. Still, we don't process the individual information unless our subconscious mind alerts us to the incongruities, sounds, or images that rise above our personal, unconscious baselines and require further scrutiny from us. The majority of people go through their lives without really observing anything too unusual, and that is the key right there. If there isn't someone screaming or singing on your subway train, the chances are you will remember very little about the ride later on in the day. If there wasn't somebody running when everybody else in the area is walking, you likely won't notice anything odd in the area. You probably won't even be able to recall any detail about anyone in particular. If everyone else is moving in one direction, say returning from a food area to work, you may look out of place moving against a grain of traffic. It would be better to maybe sit or stand in place, bury your head in a book or a phone, and not risk appearing to have contrary behavior to the surroundings around you. Avoid the observer and be the observer. It is a woman, especially a mother, who will first see the lost child in a crowd. Most men realistically would walk by and not even notice a child. Men who are fathers themselves are more likely to notice. The security guard whose job it is to protect an area is most likely to see the out-of-place abandoned backpack or sketchy, nervous individual. Most people are below the observational baseline. It is natural for most individuals to drone out the sounds and images in every environment. Know that in every environment, there are people who are observing, and the gray man's goal is to remain unobserved. Suppose you go to an area where people commonly meet up to go for lunch, like a statue or a significant street corner. People will be scanning the crowd for people with similar features to their friends, which means they are more apt to notice anything or anyone out of the ordinary. You will want to avoid these areas by skirting around them. Guards, door attendants, hostesses, retail kiosk staff, and of course police are conditioned to scan the crowds for familiar features. Guards may be looking for threats or just be checking people out in general. Door attendants are looking for features similar to the occupants of the buildings which they are associated. Retail kiosk staff are looking for customers or individuals who can use their services or products. And police officers have been trained to alert on suspicious individuals. A federal agent once told me they always had to remind rookies to look at their shoes. Shoes are a significant identifier of socioeconomics and position. The undercover agent making a drug buy is likely out of place if wearing loafers. If you're wearing a bulky jacket on a warm day, the police officer will be the first to notice. In one police manual, I have read that to determine if a suspect has an unholstered weapon, you only need to keenly observe the manner they walk and how they shift their weight. Identifying suspicious individuals just outside the baseline is part of their observational training. Assess the environment you're about to move through. Avoid making eye contact, but look at where others are looking. Where are others observing the crowd? Who are the people actively looking? Or where are those people most likely to be? Don't be afraid to stop, look at your smartphone, for instance, and then move on to another direction from those observation points. Even to the trained and astute observer, it'll look like you just forgot something or had a message which caused you to alter your preset plans. Go with the flow and have a plan. Almost everyone you see has a plan. It's a person who does not have a plan that we naturally question what they're doing. The tourist is sightseeing. A person may be going to the store, to work, on a date, out to eat, or with other specific purposes. The common element is that almost all the people functioning below the acceptable baseline are moving with purpose and according to the particular pattern and flow. The tourist and the couple on the date are not likely to be in any particular hurry. The person returning to work is typically moving to the business district and is moving more rapidly. The tourist may be stopping for a selfie. Almost everywhere these days, though, you can find people just standing and looking at their phones, and you can use that to your advantage. Stopping out of the flow of the pedestrian traffic and looking down at your phone or newspaper or book provides you the opportunity to assess the flow, look for would-be observers, and plan your route. People moving with the flow only observe you long enough to move past you. You're more an obstacle to avoid because you would impede their progress and their plan. So long as your stopping is not jarring to them, you will likely remain unnoticed. Ask yourself, what is your plan and purpose for moving through or standing still in an environment? Make sure that plan aligns with others in the area and falls below the observational baseline. Ask yourself what the flow patterns of the site are. Where are the highest concentrations of people? Where are they moving to, and how fast or slow are they moving there? How does this flow pattern change from just one block over from where you are? What might someone in that environment be doing? The key to not being observed here is to become the observer, to blend in. You will want to understand the intents, movements, and types of people in your environment, and then mimic those behaviors. When you are the observer, you will more easily pick up on others in the environment outside the baseline. The undercover police officer looking for someone in the crowd, the person staring at you because they are scanning the public for their friend and something about you alerted them, the person just watching for some unknown reason. Any of these people will immediately pop to your attention when you are the observer of the baseline. You may see them before they see you. Pretend not to notice them if you noted that they are directly observing you. Nonchalantly move from their line of vision and leave the area. Chances are their attention will refocus away from you if you've only slightly risen above the baseline. Facial recognition. There are two real types of facial recognition. There's the kind we do with our eyes, and there's the kind that computers do. Here we will briefly look at both. It is natural for people to study faces, yet we view direct eye contact, just like animals, as a threat. If you want to test this theory, make and hold a stranger's gaze. Within seconds of their recognition of it, the stranger will be questioning your intent. That long survivalist beard you have been growing might not stand out in your small town, but it will in the business district of a city. The dark sunglasses you wear as part of your disguise and concealment are out of place on a cloudy day, just as they are out of place at night. A cowboy hat in a city setting would look out of place, but a baseball cap on the local sports team falls under the baseline because people in that area are accustomed to seeing that. A hoodie may be out of place in one environment, but perfectly natural in another. Subtly concealing your eyes, face, and head will keep you from being scrutinized by casual observers. Even if it is too dark for sunglasses, clear lens glasses can conceal the pupils and most of the eyes. Concealing your face is essential when you consider passive observational methods like electronic surveillance. Facial recognition softwares identify key points on a face, the distance between pupils, the outer points of the eye or outer canthus, the inner point of the eyes or inner canthus, the center point between eyes or glabella, the tip of the nose, the philtrum, the nares, the chin, the points around the lips, and many more spots. The more points the software can identify and measure, the more accurate its identification will be. The uniqueness of our faces is as precise an identifier as our fingerprints. Our brains do the same measurements and identification, but we just don't realize that they're doing it. And, just like our brains, the software has a baseline. It is either comparing these points to a set of matching parameters that it has to look for, or recording the information for further comparisons. The next time you have a moment, as part of your exercises to become the gray man, pause and add up all the active cameras in your area. How many CCTV domes do you see around banks, ATMs, parking structures, public parks, or in front of doorways, and so forth? Imagine that they're all linked together. Does it provide a comprehensive view of an entire area? Likely they're not all linked together at any given moment, but it only takes one of these cameras connected to a software program to notice features or behavior outside of the typical baseline for bells and whistles to be triggered. Even irregular movements can trigger alerts in some software. Voice recognition software and drug dogs work in a similar manner. Voice recognition software filters out all noise and listens for the right voice or the correct phrases that trigger above the baseline. Drug dogs are not trained to alert on the perfumes someone uses to try and conceal their drugs. They are trained to alert on the drugs they're going to smell underneath the odor. All active and passive surveillance has a baseline. Understand where that is and what the likely triggers might be, then act accordingly. Looking down slightly is your best defense from both observer gazes and cameras. A hat then conceals many facial features. Sunglasses or glasses add some additional protection for your identifiable facial points. Right now, masks worn during what may consider an active pandemic are the gray man's best friend. They conceal critical points on the nose, mouth, and chin. A few years back, wearing a mask would make you a focal point. Now, not wearing a mask is more likely to draw the observer's gaze. Protect your face's identification points like you protect your driver's license if you hope to remain unseen. Your ability to go unnoticed in both calm and chaotic environments depends on your ability to observe and emulate the baselines of appearance, behavior, and flow. Be the observer instead of the observed. Act as if you have a specific intent and direction and move accordingly through the area. Be aware of your face and the identifiers it has. Do your best to conceal yourself within the natural parameters of the dress and the environment. Remember, the baseline is like a calm surface of the water. You will want to avoid anything that could disturb that calm surface and register with either people or software. If you found this video informative and helpful, please feel free to like it and share it with your friends, family, and community. If you have any comments or anything you'd like to share, please feel free to leave a comment in the comments section below. I usually try to read the comments and respond to them when I can, and that's usually within the first hour of releasing the video. If you'd like to be notified when other videos become available, you may want to subscribe to this channel. As always, stay safe out there.